Cowboys lost. I am so happy.
I think you're so funny because when you try to do the outro, you're like a little kid who's trying to come back from an insult. You're like,
Philadelphia, baby, you're gonna love it. Best sports fans in the world. Actually, the worst, but that's what makes them the best.
Everybody, welcome into the Whole podcast. Ben Pirro, Steve McAvoy, recording here on a Sunday after Grayson Murray takes home the Sony Open of Hawaii. I give Grayson Murray a lot of shit, and I guess rightfully so to the nth degree, considering he trashed us on Twitter. Hold on, KB's calling. Hi, honey. Well, I had a question for you, but I kind of answered it myself. You're now on the pod. So welcome in. I'm giving my opening monologue, and I mentioned that I give Grayson Murray a lot of shit. And of course, he just won the Sony Open of Hawaii. To give you guys watching a recap, basically, Grayson Murray had 80 yards to the pin on 18, had to make a birdie to force the playoff with Ben on and Keegan Bradley. Bradley missed the birdie putt, tapped in for par. On did the same. And Murray hits it like 2.5 feet, taps it in, goes to the playoff, clips the trees left off the tee shot, lays back up into the fairway. Ben on, who doesn't carry a 3-wood, ropes a stinging 1-iron right off the green into the short grass. Bradley hits his second shot into the fucking grandstand, so he has free relief, a great lie. He fucking chunks the chip shot. Ben on misses from 2.5 feet. Bradley misses his long putt, and Grayson Murray nails a 38-footer to win the event. Now, I give Grayson Murray a lot of shit, but the guy has gone through a lot in his career. He's battled through alcoholism. He's had some issues where he even said in his interview he has considered giving up on golf, giving up on his relationships, giving up on his life, with some very, very heavy stuff. Thank God, and the like. KB, has our opinion at all changed on Grayson Murray, despite the fact that he gave us shit on social?
He won't ever be forgiven in my book until he comes on the pod. Secondly, what you're telling me is that in this performance today, we have scientifically justified that Grayson Murray more clutch than Dak Prescott.
Well, when you put it that way, it's really bad. I thought the Cowboys were going to run the Packers out of the building.
I predicted back during Thanksgiving that the Cowboys would be one and done, and I had several stupid Cowboys fans tweeting at me, and I was like, have fun losing in the wild card round.
I mean,
again,
not for nothing. It's like death taxes, first round exits for the Cowboys. I should have known better. Thankfully, I didn't bet the side. However, I want to know the asshole who bet Aaron Jones and Jake Ferguson 3 touchdowns apiece. That guy must have made a fucking killing today.
That guy's going on vacation while the Cowboys season's ending, but they're both going, here we go, Cancun.
He actually might see Dak Prescott chilling on a beach chair in Cancun. Wouldn't be surprised in the slightest. Ooh, big killer. Although I will say Dak Prescott proved to me this regular season that he is a top 5 quarterback.
All right. Can we get this show on the road, please?
All right. Well, Ben is urging me to get the show on the road, so I'm going to kick you out. I apologize. Thank you for coming on the show.
Ben's hitting the Dak Prescott thing. Here we go.
I'm fucking done with you. Goodbye, buddy. All right.
Just so you know,
yes,
I could barely hear anything that KB was saying. So
all right. Well,
you won't be able to hear anything. That's why I was like, let's get this thing going.
That's totally fine. You can hear it in post. So yeah, so Grayson Murray, a big time win, nails a 38-footer, clutches up, earns his stripes, wins at the Sony Open, the first win, and I believe it's been almost 7 years. Yeah, 7 years. Won his first event at the 2017 Barbasol Championship, knocks out Ben On and Keegan Bradley. On actually has a really good story because if you remember from like back in late August, he was suspended from the PGA Tour for 3 months. He missed the full fall swing because of taking an over-the-counter drug, cough syrup, that contained a banned substance that's legal in South Korea where he lives. So Ben On had a really good story going into this. I was perpetually trying to speak into existence a Ben On or Keegan Bradley victory, but you know what? For the one time on this show, I will give Grayson Murray his flowers and say congratulations to him on his victory. And he is a very, very pretty fiance. So he's doing better in more than one ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Ben, how was your grilled chicken and potatoes?
grilled chicken, potatoes, and broccoli were fantastic. Tasted even better that Dak Prescott and Cowboys are going home. Daddy Matty Stafford is just gonna light it up in Detroit once again. Practiced in the rain all day today. It's a good day. But hats off to Grayson. He's obviously been through a lot. The beef and the drama between Grayson and this podcast, I don't know much about, considering I was not a part. I hadn't been a part of the
fiasco.
The whole fiasco. That was more of I believe, a John, Steve, and KB thing.
It's really a me thing at the end of the day, because I called him out for sucking ass in comparison to Kevin Na, and then because it was at the U.S. Open, Na missed the cut, Grayson made it, and he gave me shit. Then proceeded to shoot 10 over on Saturday.
Well, I don't know. I don't understand why you're starting beef with the guy that made the cut at the U.S. Open.
No, well, I said this on 10 in the morning on Thursday. I didn't think he was going to make the cut. He was like 3 over through 4. But at the time, it was all about the beef, because Grayson Murray had said that Kevin Na is like the slowest player on tour, and it was a whole fiasco. But yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, and I know he threw his putter, which I saw the video. That's actually kind of funny.
that was during his 10 over blow up.
Yeah, he was pissed
on Saturday.
He was pissed, but no, it sounds like the guy has been through a lot, and so congratulations to Grayson, and for fighting the inner demons, which that's a pretty ugly battle. That's a very ugly battle for someone to fight, and it sounds like he's in a much better place now. He has a fiance, and I've heard very good things from tour players regarding Grayson, actually. So don't listen to Steven. Anyway.
No, but I do agree with you. The mentality of things, and actually it's really interesting that we're talking mentality in this episode, because last week, of course, Chris Kirk won. He battled his alcoholism, his whole scenario. Grayson had mentioned him in an interview with, I believe it was Golf Weekly or Golf Week, Golf Digest, whatever it was, saying that Chris was an inspiration. He's been someone who he's been looking up to, and has been really somebody who's been huge for everybody in that community. You look at guys like Willie Wilcox, who is now off the PGA Tour. He suffered from it. He actually he was never able to come back from it. Mental health issues with Matthew Wolff, another guy who's mentioned Chris Kirk multiple times. So it's tough to fight the inner demons. And ironically, we're talking about mentality when on the other side of this show, in about 40 minutes or so, we have a great interview with your former coach at Xavier, Brian McCants, who we go in depth on the idea of recruiting and keeping guys mentally in tune on the golf course, and how important the mental side of golf is. So absolutely looking forward to that. Want all of you guys to stick around, listen to that. Quick little shameless plug before I plug it later on. Moving on from the Sony Open, though, it's been another week of sponsorship movement. We officially now have more traction in the world of who is representing who, and the lead of it is Minwoo Lee, is now the second PGA Tour golfer sponsored by Lululemon. You wouldn't have thought that Lulu would have gotten into the space. Of course, they have the athleisure wear, but they've now signed Grayson Murray, Minwoo Lee, as their second athlete, amongst a few other small moves. Charlie Hall from the LPGA Tour, she's joining up with Jason Day at Malden. We do have official confirmation, allegedly, that Tiger Woods will be teeing it up at Riviera. He is expected to be in his new sponsorship apparel by that event. So we're looking forward to seeing who that will be, whether it be TaylorMade or others in the space. Keegan Bradley also signed with a bit more of a bespoke, interesting company, Flag and Anthem. I hear them a lot on WFAN. Boomer Esiason is a sponsor of them as well, but not typically a golf company. They're kind of more of a rugged, outdoorsy. They sell flannels, jeans, kind of I don't even know what kind of brand to describe them as. More like a Wrangler almost. But they are now a part of the fold in the golf space. Patrick Cantlay moves on from Goldman Sachs and Hugo Boss as of last year. He's now joined up with Apollo Global Management, continuing his chain of boring wealth management companies to represent his hat sponsors.
Why do you have such like? I understand like why people have like have a problem with you said Patrick Cantlay, correct? Yeah, I understand why people might have a problem with him. Just from the slow play aspect. I mean, kind of would drive anybody nuts. But like, it's a private wealth management company. That is literally the company that you want to have sponsor you. Like that is literally what you want to have. Like that's an ideal sponsor as a professional athlete.
Of course.
Like,
but
what? No. I'm talking. You've been talking way too much on this show already. It's pissing me off. Why are you just like taking like these shots at this guy for like? What is this, Steven? What is? It's not necessary. It's not. It's not necessary.
I have no ill will towards Patrick Cantlay. I want to just preface that. I just think it like he's as a person. I think Patrick Cantlay just screams boring. Like, you know the episode of SpongeBob where he becomes normal SpongeBob?
Sure, I can't.
And like he's like a homebody. He's like he does painting instead of like being the goofy character that he is. Like that to me is Patrick Cantlay. He's very, very bland. He doesn't have any sort of like style or swag on course. Actually, he used to early on. He used to get a little bit crazy. But I don't know. He's just kind of a bland guy, and I think a global asset management company like Apollo, I think makes complete sense for anybody. Yes, we see a bunch of guys getting sponsored by those huge corporations because at the end of the day, those are the companies that represent golf. But I don't know. I think it's just very apropos for someone like Patrick Cantlay to be rocking a asset management firm on his hat, just as he did with Goldman for the last couple of years. But it's boring. I think it's funny that it is boring. That's just the opinion. I want to pose a question though, segueing from the sponsorship tuning. Is there any other brands that you want to see kind of get into the space? Of course, we've seen Malbin and now Lululemon get involved. Flag and Anthem is getting in. Are there any other like brands that aren't traditional golf brands that you would want to see on tour or possibly even sponsor you?
I mean, whoever wants to sponsor me, I'm all ears. But I mean, I know Noble. They're in the game of golf right now. Scott Stallings, he's sponsored by Noble. So they're kind of getting into like the sponsoring of athletes, that realm. I'd like to see like, I don't know. Are you talking about like are you talking about clothing or just sponsors in general?
I would say clothing specific because it kind of makes sense.
What if like, I don't know, like a Levi or something? I don't know. You can't really wear jeans on the course. I don't really know, man. Like, if we're talking about sponsors as a whole, I'd like to see more like athletic, like cross training brands or like supplement brands kind of become more of a thing, like Muscle Milk, KT Tape, whoever makes KT Tape. What about whoever the like the parent company of Uncrustables is? I think that would be no, shut up. I think Uncrustables it's like
they're amazing.
It's one of the best golf course snacks you can have, and the fact that they don't sponsor anybody is just nuts. It's insane to me. I think those would be solid. I think those would be really good. But who knows? Maybe throw in like I don't know, like a Netflix, like Netflix sponsors a golfer. I don't know, like
We, we've seen some really whack ass brands. I know. Obviously, I always mention this as Kiradek Effie Barnrat was sponsored by Jewel when it was like first big.
I know.
Which, like, by the way, like the ultimate branding, the one guy who just fucking rips all day on the golf course, the perfect sponsor for your Jewel brand. I think Noble is actually kind of interesting because I've never personally worn any of their products, but I've seen their ads for years.
Their stuff's great. They just
Yeah,
run
I've seen some
really
great stuff.
small. It just runs very like I'm an extra large in their shirts.
Oh, so I can never fit into any of their shit then.
You'd be like quadruple XL.
If they even like sell that, I'm like looking now on their site. I doubt it. Like most of these places probably tap out of like 2x. I think actually one company that stands out to me, similar to what you're saying with like the gym like cross training kind of brands. I think Gymshark would be a great sponsor to get into the space because they already kind of have that like robust atmosphere. Granted that they don't have like polos and pants, but they're already so well established within the actual gym community that if they're able to expand out of that, I think they'd be a pretty also just like a cool logo in general to have on your apparel. Other ones, I'd have to really kind of dig in on this. I mean, I don't think anybody would do this. I mean, Vineyard Vines is like getting more into the space. I know Jason Duffner is sponsored by them. JT Poston is, but like aside from a couple of golfers, they haven't really expanded their golf line like whatsoever. It's still very much like a sailing up class preppy kind of brand. J. Crew could also get into the space. I'm thinking more of those like prepster brands. I think makes sense because they already have the polo and like athletic pant kind of lines.
Brooks Brothers.
That would be a fucking classy ass brand to get involved in golf.
With their ties all the time growing up. I'm still waiting on my polos though. I've been waiting on those polos for like 3 years or something.
Actually, yeah,
from
speaking of like Brooks Brothers, I think it'd be interesting because like I've been watching a lot of F1 recently, like the Netflix show.
Mhm.
And one of the companies that sponsors, I believe it's Mercedes-Benz, is Tommy Hilfiger. Like those kind of brands, I think make a lot of sense because they already cater to a higher class demographic to begin with. So like the Tommy Hilfigers of the world, I think, similar to like Cole Haan, J. Crew, like I said, those companies I think make a lot of sense. Would be interesting to see how they expand out and just give us more opportunity to get into those athletes or kind of avenues. Shifting away from the events this week at the Sony Open. Phil Mickelson is now back in the news. The high flyer live golfer was asked this week about the possibility of him captaining the 2025 Ryder Cup team at Bethpage Black.
That would be awesome.
Quote, I'm too divisive for that. I'm the wrong person to be leading that team. I've been saying I think it's Tiger Woods' team to captain because he's been so good at Bethpage his whole career, and it just makes sense because he's towards the back end. I know you agree with the idea of Phil Mickelson being a fun captain. Why is that?
I mean, it's Phil. You know, he brings everywhere Phil goes. There's drama that follows. You know, whether it's insider trading or
Gambling.
Like
would Phil Mickelson gamble on his own offense at that point?
Did he?
No. Like, could you see Phil if he captained the Ryder Cup team to like bet on his team or like bet on individual events?
I would hope not. That would be terrible. I just or just him just talking about how LIV is way better than the PGA Tour. Like, there's always something. Like, the guy needs to just have a camera and a microphone with him wherever he goes because something's going to happen. Something wild is going to come out of that mouth of his. I think it would be so much fun. Now, I do agree. It's probably I'm saying it would be fun, like, because it's Phil, and Phil's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
The New York crowd is crazy. It's going to be cool out, which means people are going to be drinking to stay warm. It's going to get really wild out there. But, I mean, it's obvious. Like, it's probably Tiger's team. I couldn't see another logically, I can't see someone else being the captain. I can't.
I'd have to like think about that honestly, because like looking at the American side, I mean, Zach Johnson is obviously still like kind of on the younger side, I guess you could say. Like Zach Johnson,
like a Stuart Sink, maybe.
who is a vice captain last year. I feel like the Zach Johnson pick was always a little weird to me. Not necessarily that he's not a good fit to have coached, but the fact that he's like still on tour and like still playing. Like Steve Stricker was obviously he only plays so often, and he's more on the Champions Tour. When Davis Love coached, it was the same kind of idea, or captained it.
Captain, get it right.
Captain, sorry. I just like I don't know. The Zach Johnson pick was like the equivalent of if the Europeans picked Justin Rose, like guys who are still very much on the PGA Tour and still play almost every other week.
Well,
So,
I wouldn't go that far. I think Justin Rose is playing at a much higher level right now than Zach Johnson is. I mean, Zach doesn't really have a card. I know Zach played last week.
I think he's playing solely on exemptions at this point.
Yeah, he's playing on exemptions at this point because last year he had to finish top 125 on the money list or the FedEx Cup, whatever it was, by the end of the year to regain his card, and he didn't.
Yeah.
So,
and he flopped in the fall.
What's that?
And he flopped in the fall. So
yeah. So I mean, look, I work with Zach Johnson's instructor. Like Zach has had a great long career, but the comparison, I think Justin Rose at this stage of his career is a better player than Zach Johnson is.
Understandable. But yeah, like I don't think there's another guy who, unless you were going to go similar to the age of Zach Johnson, with the exception of Stuart Sink, I really don't think there's any Americans that fit the mold that isn't Tiger Woods. Although it'd be interesting to see. I don't know what the relationship is between Tiger and Phil, but a part of me thinks that if it's at least not totally strained by the whole live thing, it'd be cool to see Tiger and Phil as captain and then vice captain.
Well, the thing is, like, it was believed for a long time that they didn't like each other.
Yeah.
That was like the general consensus. And then I believe it was 2004. Hale Irwin was the captain of the Ryder Cup, and he put Tiger and Phil together, and it was just a disaster. I mean, they played awful. They didn't mesh well at all. And it was just like, I remember there was a close-up. Phil hit a ball that was so far out of play, and it was just Tiger's face on camera, and he's like looking into the camera like this. Like he can't believe, he's like he couldn't believe how far out of play Phil had hit it. Mm-hmm. But then, they did the match thing, and it appeared that they had actually a good relationship. And I was like, oh, maybe they're older. They understand they're kind of on, they're pretty much on the outs. But, I don't know, the whole live thing, it would be interesting. I don't think having one as a captain, the other as a vice captain, I think that would be a bad thing. I think that would be a bad decision.
I think it's interesting. I actually didn't even realize this. Fred Couples has never been a captain of the Ryder Cup.
He hasn't? Oh, okay. Well, I could see him. Okay.
I think like Couples can make sense. You could bring back Jim Furyk, who captained the team in 2018 when they lost to Europe. But I think those are kind of the three guys not named Tiger Woods that make sense between Furyk, Couples, and Sink. If you were to invite them back, of course, the Europeans are bringing back Luke Donald. So that'll be fun to see how that one goes. Final thing before we jump to our picks for the week as we get into this interview on the other side, the new led John Rahm LIVGolf team has allegedly leaked a new team name, and don't really know how I feel about it. It sounds a bit odd. The team is allegedly called Legion 13, which takes it's derived from a group of Roman soldiers largely responsible for the Romanization of Spain and Portugal. They also had, whoa. You had a phone call? Who was it?
My sister.
Bring her on. Let's hear it.
I just declined it.
So Legion 13 is allegedly the name of the team, very much different from all the other teams on Live. Is it a hit or a miss?
I think it's a fine name. I don't see anything wrong with it. I think it's. I mean, I think I've definitely heard worse names for live teams, for sure. Uh,
Creeks.
yeah, I just don't understand that one. Is that still a name?
Yes.
Like, why are we keeping that? Like, are they just doing it because it's funny? Like, I don't understand.
Still trying to. We go over this multiple
Yeah,
times, and I always forget what it is.
What is a clique? What is it?
I believe it's like an anti-clique. It's a clique was a long iron from golf's earlier days.
That's just such a dumb name. That's the bad. That's the worst name. I mean, no, I think no, I think John Rums. I don't really know where the 13 comes from. That's the only thing I don't
Also,
understand.
Legion 13. It was a basically like a battalion of soldiers who helped Romanize Spain and Portugal during the Roman Empire back in the day.
Okay, all right, all right. I understand that then. I was like, was the 13 supposed to mean anything? All right.
So I still think it's a miss not calling them Los Toros and having a sick ass bull
I
as their
think
logo.
I think it is a grounder right up the middle. I think it's a hit. It's not a sexy hit, but it's a hit.
I also like now how live teams are starting to establish themselves as like this team is the South American team. I believe that's what is it? Is it Torque? I think it is. It's Mito, Joaquin, Sebastian Munoz, and Carlos Ortiz. It's all Central American and South American players. Or there's like a full on is it Smash? Well, Smash is mostly all Americans. The four races of I was Americans. There's other teams that are like largely British or the Fireballs are all Spanish or some form of Spanish. So there's 3 Spaniards and then Abraham Answer. So it'd be cool to have another all Spanish team, but the question would be how would they go about doing that? All right, we're going to jump right in now to our beer money picks as there isn't a lot of other news in the golf world. We'll review the field this week at the Amex within our picks here. But let's jump right into it. Our beer money picks brought to you by our friends over at Kenwood Beer, Philadelphia's ultimate light beer, less calories than your standard lager. It's a perfect, crisp, refreshing taster, whether it be at the Wells Fargo Center or your local Whole Foods, or of course your local packy. Go to KenwoodBeer.com, find on the Kenny tracker where you can get your hands on some ice cold Kennies, particularly now with the Eagles possibly dropping a major playoff game tomorrow to the Buccaneers. Who knows? Might need a few to handle that one. Must be 21 years or older to consume. Please drink responsibly. A little bit of a background check here on what to expect at the American Express this year. Very similar, well, the exact same as every other time we've been here for the past few years at La Quinta. It'll be 3 courses, the Nicklaus PGA West course, PGA West Stadium course, and La Quinta Country Club. They'll play 2 on La Quinta and then 1 at Nicklaus and PGA West. Par 72 on all 3 courses. Course lengths range anywhere from about 7,060 yards to anywhere to about 7,200 and change. John Rahm, your defending champion, he will not be in the field this week. And the tournament record score we're going for this week is 28 under the card. One of the more challenging courses within the California swing, at least the early on stage. A peat dye design, plenty of pop bunkers, elevated tees, lots of undulations all across this golf course, as well as 2 island greens, one of which being a par 3. We're going to jump right into top 20. Who are you taking this week at the Amex?
I'm gonna go with Sam Ryder. He's been a very popular pick of mine dating back to last year. He's been a staple on tour since he got out there. Fantastic golfer, great ball striker, all around solid game. I think this is an event that's just made for him. So Sam Ryder for a top 20 finish.
I am kind of going in blind this week. So, of course, recording this show on a Sunday, we don't really have odds out quite yet. So we don't necessarily know where the odds stack. And typically based on that is where I will take my picks. So a little bit blind. This might be the worst week that I have this season. So we'll see how it goes. But top 20, I'm going to go with Cameron Davis. He had a really low round. I believe it was opening round of the Sony Open. I believe he had an opening round 62, 8 under. Always manages to play well in California. This early part of the season, we always see Cam Davis go low, place well, and then always kind of trickle off of the radar for some reason once we get to March. So I love Cam Davis here for a top 20. Top 10.
My sister is complaining about boy drama. Oh my gosh. Would you say top 10?
Yeah.
Okay. Top 10. I'm going to go with someone who has a little bit of history at this event. Adam Hadwin. He shot 59 on one of the courses that he'll be playing this week. And I think that the history and the good vibes could serve him very well. So Adam Hadwin, beautiful golf swing. We all know how I love beautiful golf swings. Just an all-around. He always dresses well. He always looks the part, and he's a great player. He was the forgotten man in the Ricky playoff win from last year. Adam Hadwin, top 10.
Let me see where he finished this past week, because this is going to probably be the determinant of where I go this week. Finished 13th. Okay. I'm going Akshay Bhatia for a top 10. He's been on fire the last 2 weeks. He's finished top 20 in both events. In the Hawaii swing, still getting his bearings on the PGA Tour, but he's absolutely shown that he is beyond the real deal. This week finished T13, had all rounds in the 60s, finished 12 under the card, 5 off the lead. A lot of that got derailed by a late third round double bogey late, I believe, on the 17th hole. So definitely looking forward to him to keep it going. So I'll take Akshay for top 10. Top 5.
All right, top 5. I'm going to go with a guy whose fashion choices this year I have not been crazy about, but he still nonetheless is a very good golfer. Give me Jason Day with a top 5 finish. I like this play this week. I really do. I don't like to go off of I have a feeling, but I have a feeling that Jason Day is going to finish top 5.
Interesting. That's a really interesting pick. Top 5 for me this week. I don't want to go too crazy. The recent winners at this event are really wide ranging, but they all kind of follow a similar theme. John Rahm, Hudson Swafford, Siwoo Kim, Andrew Landry, John Rahm won here again, also in 2018. Long hitters, straight hitters, and good approach play. I'm gonna take the guy who you claim that I don't like. I'll take Patrick Cantlay for a top 5 this week.
That's a good pick.
Give me pick. Who are you taking?
Man, I hate to do this. This guy, he touched the hearts of many in Rochester last year at the PGA Championship. He is in this event because he is the PGA Section Champion, which, if you don't know, this is in Southern California. Michael Block to miss the cut. I think that's a gimme. And I hate to be that guy, but I don't see it, man. So I'm going to go with Michael Block to miss the cut.
You know, it's really funny that you say Michael Block this week. I'm not taking him. I had him actually on here as a interesting play. But I'm going to take the guy to make the cut that I was originally going to match them both up with. Daniel Berger hasn't played an event in a year and a half. Lingering back injury has been I think since last U.S. Open or two U.S. Opens ago. Has not been the same player. Tried to play it out, couldn't do it. He's been out of the game for so long. I think he's fallen all the way back to the 600s in the OWGR.
No
I think
way.
Daniel Berger, yeah.
Oh my God, he has.
Yeah, it's bad.
Wow.
He's dropped heavy. I'm going to take Danny Berger to make the cut this week really hoping he gets back into this because I loved Daniel Berger from when I first got into golf, like hardcore before doing the show. Right when COVID hit, they had restarted the season at Colonial, and it was a two-way playoff. It was Colin Morikawa and Daniel Berger, and I had obviously known Colin, but to watch Daniel Berger play, he had so much poise those final 6 holes to force the playoff and then eventually win the event that I was like, I love the way this guy games. And the fact that he's now back on tour just gives me more of that reason to root for him. So I love Danny Berger this week for a made cut, as opposed to Michael Block, who I also think will miss the cut, which thank you for playing that one for me. Your winner this week of the Amex, who are you taking?
He's a man that Stephen McAvoy will just bash anytime he has the opportunity. Steven picked him for a top 5, but I have much more faith in him than Steven does because I am picking Patrick Cantlay, past FedEx Cup champion, for the win this week. That sweet swing and that great sponsor that he has, private wealth management companies. You go, Patrick. I approve of it, even if Steven doesn't, because what does Steven know? Nothing.
Clearly no more than you. I'm doing better on beer money picks.
Shut up. Actually, wait, you it was 2-1 the first week. What was it last week?
You mean this week?
Yeah, this week.
Well, yeah, this past week. What was it? I actually didn't even sit down to look at it. The one thing I do know for a fact, though, that was that I took Zalatoris, Adrian, and Kuchar to make the cut, and they all missed with flying colors. Let's see. I actually didn't even look at it. Never really had the chance to.
Well, so it wasn't there a bet that we were gonna make, like whoever hit on board on more beer money picks?
Yeah, like throughout the year. I'm keeping track of that. I just didn't do it this week because we obviously.
What was the bet?
I don't know.
One of us had to dress up as didn't one of us have to dress up?
like dress in women's golf attire and play around, and I believe you have to caddy for me.
If you win, but then if I win, you have to caddy for me, right? Wait, how does this work? Wait a minute.
If you win,
I
have to wear women's golf clothes.
Okay.
And play around a golf.
Got it.
If I win, I don't know if it's if I win, I caddy for you or you caddy for me. I don't know what it is.
No, I think it was I had to caddy for you. I think that was.
I have to go back and look. So this past week, you hit on Russell Henley top 5. That was a really good pick. So shouts to you on that one. We each missed on our top 10s. You had Kirk and I had Eric Cole, and Cole just missed. I hit on Kurt Kitayama top 20. You had Kuchar, so that one's out. Did Ben Coles finish top 45? Ben Coles. I know he made the cut. I have to look up his name. 1 second, please. Ben Coles, T52. So he missed out narrowly. And then we had Thagala and Harmon to win. So 1-1 for each of us this week.
3-2 in total. Okay. Yeah.
3-2 in total.
All right. Yeah. So my pick, long story short, I'm picking Patrick Cantlay. So
my winning pick this week, I'm gonna go with Sam Burns. Bermuda grass on, I believe, 2 of these courses. We know the story with Sam Burns. I'll ride with the Burns train early on in the year. That mustache is elite. Final thing, before we jump to the other side of this amazing episode with an interview with Ben's former coach, Brian McCants. One thing that I didn't mention this week that I think is a important footnote in all of the news that has been jumping around on the PGA Tour, as I pull it up on my phone to make sure that I get this completely correct. Rory McIlroy, I know you refuse to talk about this, but Rory McIlroy, in a matter of 10 minutes, had the lead at the inaugural Dubai Invitational over Tommy Fleetwood, landed his driver in the drink, hit it to 2 feet, 3-putted from 2 feet, lost the event to Tommy Fleetwood. Just want to put it out there. Rory McIlroy folded like a goddamn chair this week, and it gives me no other pleasure but to say that his first event of the year is an absolute flop, and my Underachiever of the Year award is doing strides right now for all of us.
Oh my God.
This is the Hate Rory McIlroy podcast of 2024. I'm sorry. I used to love Rory. This guy's on my fucking last nerve, and I'm so happy that he dropped. Shout out to Tommy Fleetwood for a big win in Dubai, by the way.
Look, I don't enjoy, like, I don't want to hate people. I hope that people don't think that we want to hate.
No.
You know,
I don't hate anybody. Hate's a really strong word that's reserved for a very few core people, by the way.
absolutely. But Rory just drives me nuts. He really does. And he does and says a lot of things. By the way, funny thing about Rory, he told Grayson Murray to play better last year, allegedly. And according to Monday Q, a popular Twitter account, this was confirmed by several sources in that meeting, that players' meeting. And Monday Q goes, well, he must have listened because he just won. So hats off to Grayson Murray for that. He's very coachable, apparently. But I just, Rory he rubs me the wrong way. I think that's like, for me, that's like the best way I can describe it. He just kind of rubs me the wrong way. And the theatrics on the course kind of drive me nuts. And the mood swings on the course kind of drive me nuts. And the stuff that he says, his stupid and childish and ineffective trash talking ways drive me nuts. It's just, he's honestly kind of he's very easy to just like kind of make fun of. That's like the best way I can describe it. So
Makes it fun.
What's that?
Makes it fun. It adds character to the show.
Absolutely, it does. Absolutely. It's kind of like when Stephen A. Smith's beef with Jay Cutler. He hated Jay Cutler. Oh my God. You remember his rants about that poor guy?
Oh yeah.
Oh man. Anyway.
I cannot wait for Stephen A. Smith to get absolutely rocked and make a fool of himself because he was so all over the Cowboys this entire week.
Oh yeah.
That's gonna be so bad. All right, folks. Don't go anywhere. Right here on Getting the Whole exclusive interview. Former Xavier head coach Brian McCants. Ben, final thing before we go.
This is a fantastic interview. This is someone that I hold very near and dear, close to my heart. He's been a very positive influence on my life. I think that this is whether you are a kid looking to play in college or someone that's just interested in the college golf landscape as a whole, someone who has nearly 20, actually, I believe over 20 years of college golf experience, either at the assistant coach level or the head coach level, Division II, Division I, Power 5 conference to non-Power 5 conference. This is the episode for you. I think it's a great listen. He really dives into the mindset of what he notices that that college kids might lack or what college kids might have. He talks up your boy quite a bit too. So
shut up.
I think in all seriousness, it's a fantastic episode. We had a blast filming this. So go listen right now. Hit that like, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow Steven and I on the socials. Follow Underground Sports Philadelphia on Instagram and Twitter. Follow the Get in the Hall pod as well on Instagram and Twitter. We are posting great stuff. I have some reels coming out that I think you guys are really going to like. That being said, that's all I got. Cowboys lost. Happy Sunday, everyone. I am so happy.
I think you're so funny because when you try to do the outro, you're like a little kid who's trying to come back from an insult. You're like,
Get in the Hole is brought to you by PHI Apparel Company, our incredible merch partners. PHI Apparel Co. provides unique designs and high-quality clothing from t-shirts to hoodies for every golfer around. With their original designs for all, there's no doubt you'll stand out on the course, the driving range, or at the 19th hole. Go to phiapparel.co and use code UNDERGROUND at checkout for 10% off any order. That's code UNDERGROUND at phiapparel.co and grab exclusive Get in the Hole podcast merch and support your favorite golfers. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of the Get in the Hole podcast. I am your favorite co-host, Ben Pirro. That is your second favorite co-host, Stephen McAvoy. And today, we have a very special guest, someone who is very near and dear to my heart, someone who allowed me to continue my college career when not many people would be willing to do that. His name is Coach Brian McCants. He was the coach at Newberry College at the Division II level. He was an assistant at Kansas and Indiana, and then he ended up finishing his fantastic career at Xavier University, where he got to coach me for 2 years. He helped me feel like Xavier was home, and I'm forever grateful for Coach McCants. Coach, thanks for coming on. We're so excited to have you. You look great as always. How's everything at home? How are the wife?
All is well. All is well. We're we've gotten on the other side of the Christmas holidays, and so now that we're in January here in Cincinnati, it's all about survival and making it through this brutal winter period before the golf season starts later in March and in April. So, but in the meantime, it's all is well. The wife and the boys are doing great. And, I'll say it again before I get off, but thanks so much for having me this evening. And I'm really excited to be a part of the show.
Coach, you aren't dealing with the crazy cold front that's coming in the northeast, like the Midwest and Northeast right now, right?
I think that's supposed to get here on Friday night or first thing Saturday morning.
There's about a 25% chance that I somehow get out of this interview because the winds right now are like 65 miles an hour, and the rain feels like I'm going to either get a tree or hail through my bay window right in front of me in about 5 minutes. So I apologize if that happens, but
no problem.
Coach, thank you so much for joining us. This is a really great opportunity. We love getting to bring guests on, chat about, particularly when it comes to coaches, the way golf coaching is so different from everything else. I love the, I guess you can call them the niche sports in college, where not everyone knows much past the football, the basketball. I guess now volleyball is somehow making a huge push. But again, thank you so much for joining us. Well, I want to start off with just a quick how you got into the game of golf. What inspired you to get here? What made you want to pursue coaching full time? Just anything that has pushed you to this sort of career path.
So I first got involved in the game of golf at age 11. My dad introduced me to the game. And this is in the early to mid 80s. So golf was by no means a mainstream sport. So I played it in high school. And then I really thought high school golf was going to be as far as I took it. I was not as good a student as what Ben was in school. So I ended up at a 2-year school in North Carolina, that's where I'm from, my home state, at Lewisburg College. And my first semester college algebra teacher, he wanted to see me after class the first week of school. And, like anybody, your teacher wants to see you, you're immediately thinking, oh my gosh, what have I done wrong? But it's only the first week. So, it couldn't have been too bad already. And so after class, I go up and say, you wanted to see me? And he said, yeah. He said, do you know we have a golf team here at Lewisburg? And I said, a little bit, but I don't know a lot about it. And he said, well, I actually happen to be the golf coach. And I don't know how, but he had seen my name on a list of potential recruits in the state of North Carolina. And so he said, if you're interested, on Monday, then, this is the course we're going to be at, and this is the time you need to be there. And, we'd love to have you come. And so I took him up on it. And for 2 years I played. Now, this is a time where Ben would find this maybe very surprising, but at this stage of my life, I was a path of least resistance type of an individual on anything. And so my freshman year at Lewisburg went pretty well, traveled and played in a lot of the tournaments. My sophomore year, after having a lot of high expectations, it went completely the other way. My scores were higher. My second year, I didn't travel as much. And this is after putting more time and effort in trying to improve than I ever had in high school and during my first year at Lewisburg. So I was really turned off by the game. I didn't have any mentors within golf to kind of prepare me or to kind of, put their arm around me and say, hey, sometimes that's just how golf works. If you can't understand it, there's no way to explain it, just how it is. And so with no one to kind of let me know as to how the game of golf works, sometimes I just said, if that's what golf is all about, then, I don't want to have anything to do with it. So I transferred to a school up in Michigan, Ferris State University, they have a professional golf management program that I was very interested in. I had a distant relative who went through the PGM program at Ferris State, and he got into golf business. And so that was the path that I really wanted to pursue until my second year at Lewisburg. But I wanted to see a new part of the country, completely meet totally meet new people. And so I still went up to Ferris, had a really good time, met a lot of awesome friends that I'm still in contact with today, but golf just really took a backseat. So fast forward until 1997, and because of Tiger Woods, golf is becoming more of a mainstream attention or headline grabbing sport. And so out of nowhere, the golf bug just bit. And I was out of college for 3 years, and I was working at selling insurance, and the golf bug just bit for no reason. And so to make a long story short, I first got into the golf business as an assistant pro in North Carolina at the club I grew up in, thinking that becoming a Class A professional was the route I wanted to pursue. So I did that for 3.5 years. And my last year and a half, I think, the head pro that I worked for, he was the head coach for a local golf team. There was a Division II school, St. Andrews College, that was located in the town I grew up. And then the team, because he was the coach, they would practice at our golf course. And so getting to know the guys, and I wasn't dating anyone, I wasn't married. So on my days off and a lot of times when I was not working in the shop, I would practice with the team. I would go out on the golf course with them, play some holes with them. And invariably they would ask me, hey, to look at their swing, to look at their putting stroke or whatever it may be, just kind of walk and talk about golf. And as my interest was moving away from the Class A endeavor, it really started to gravitate towards getting into coaching. So then I spent a couple of years trying to get into coaching, which I was able to do in 2004 at Newberry College in South Carolina. And I did, I was an assistant coach, but I did full-time duties. And I did that for my first year. And then my second year, I was promoted to head coach. And then that really got me on my path. And I will say the first day on the job at Newberry, I realized that was the job for me. Everything about it, just talking to young people, being around the game of golf. I had really, by this time, from when the golf bug bit in 97 until 04, I had been in golf one way or another for 7 years, or almost 7 years. And I knew I was in the right industry, but I just didn't quite know where exactly I fit. But that first day on the job coaching, I said, this is it. This is my sweet spot. And, for 18 years, it was, I never had a day that felt different from the first day. And hopefully I would think, because Ben's asked me to be on the show and we still keep in touch and we have a great relationship, I'm still of the belief that my hope and my desire, the reason to get into coaching, to help young people to build a relationship, not just for 4 years, but as a 40-year relationship. That that's how the players received my efforts and my words and my wanting them to be as good as they could. And so that's just it's the best job I've ever had. It's the best job I ever will have. And it was just a phenomenal career.
Yeah, one thing I can say, I mean, Coach McCants has been he's had a tremendously positive influence on my career for sure. And I can confidently say that I feel like there are some coaches out there that once they get a kid, and if that kid maybe doesn't play that well, they might just be like, well, I'll just bring someone in to replace you. You had kind of a different mentality. You embraced, in a way, like if we were struggling, if an individual was struggling, you kind of almost put your arms around us. And that was something that was great to see for sure. Because when the going got tough, you always had the mentality of, well, we're just going to figure it out, and that's, to me, I mean, that's one of my favorite qualities about you, not just as a coach, but as a human being for sure. So I applaud you immensely for that mindset, because not a lot of coaches have that. Not a lot of people have that. And that's something, it sounds like it was maybe developed over time, like when the going gets tough, rather than taking the path of least resistance, you kind of go down the narrower path that might be a little bit more difficult, and so I applaud you for that. That's fantastic. It's very interesting. I didn't know that about you, actually. I didn't know that you were a path, because you were always like, if it doesn't work, like, we're just going to keep pushing, we're going to figure it out. I didn't know that about you. So hats off to you. It's interesting to see like your growth as a person just in that short little story.
When we're 18, 19 years old, we're all, the old saying, we're all 10 feet tall and bulletproof. Mm-hmm. But as you get outside of your comfort zone of your home where you grew up with your parents, and I was been lucky to have two amazing parents that were always supportive and encouraging in whatever I wanted to do. But anyway, as you leave that environment and you find yourself having to be self-sufficient and be dependent upon yourself, it took me a good number of years, after I graduated from college, to kind of, figure out what it was all about. And, the path of least resistance doesn't work. And you have to have a passion. That was one thing that I didn't have when golf was in my life. And in high school, it was not a passion. It was something I did to kind of pass the time. I enjoyed golf. And I enjoyed being part of a team. But I was by no means involved hook, line, and sinker. But then when it bit some years later, that's when it became a passion. And that's when, for the first time in my life, I wanted to go to bed early so I could get up early to go to the golf course, because I had pipe dreams of becoming a professional myself. But and so I learned later on what, some kids like Ben learn when they're 15, 16 years old. And that's one thing that I always try to communicate when I was recruiting a particular player, and then when they were involved in the program, is how I wanted to convey to them how unusual it is and how much I admired them for latching on to something when they were so young in life that they put all their effort into, and that they developed a true passion for it very early on that started them on a path for success and stacking accomplishments on top of each other. You know, in golf, you think you're only successful if you win an event. Well, you win so infrequently in the game of golf that you have to take accomplishments in whatever they are. You know, and if you're it's so easy in golf because you can pick any arbitrary date, whether it's, you know, June 1st, July 1st, or, you know, as a coach, it's after the season ends, and you look back over the previous year and you look back where you started and how the player started, and then over the course of that season, how they improved in most cases. But then some players, you know, they got off strong and then they just kind of plateaued. And there were some that, you know, for whatever reason, multiple reasons, they started out at this particular spot at the beginning of the year, and they just never kind of hit their stride, and they just kind of, you know, they didn't figure it out over the course of the year. But, you know, you always just turn the page and you got ready for the next year. But in communicating with players like Ben, you look for the low round, or you look for the low tournament, or you look for the low stretch of tournaments, or you compare the previous year's stroke average to this current year's stroke average, so that you can see in front of you that you are getting better. You have highs and lows for sure. But if you monitor what your performance is and you look back a year before, 2 years before, 5 years before, and you say to yourself, wow, I've really come a long way, I'm really getting a lot better, that just continues to motivate you to continue to work on your craft and to get better. I was one that was a huge proponent of stats. Not all the players I coached were all that geeked about them, but I was always a big believer in stats. They didn't tell the whole story, but you could see with clarity certain things that you knew you needed to get better in some areas, but you also could see concretely that you were getting better in a lot of areas too. And then going back to what Ben said a minute ago about my personal style, when I was an assistant pro, the local high school football coach was a member at our club, and he was a great guy, somebody that I held in really high regard. And I overheard him say, not to me, he was talking to someone else, but he said, our team is only as good as our weakest link. And that, when I got into coaching, that was one thing that really resonated with me, is that it doesn't matter, you know, who the best player is. It's only a testament to our program as to how good we can get our, air quote, our worst player to be. And so, you know, if the gap isn't that big from player A to player G, then, you know, you got a hell of a team. But if you have a player that's really strong, but you're the guy that kind of is the last rung on the ladder, if he's not that good, then, you know, overall you got a lot of work to do, because invariably over the course of the season, you know, things happen, whether it's injuries, whether it's poor judgment and they get in trouble off the course, or, you know, just the game. And one player's game kind of goes through cycles. If that player at the end can't kind of pick up the slack and get himself involved at some point during the season, then that's a weak link. And so that's somebody that you can't count on, that you ordinarily would need to if the time came. So that was one thing that I took way early on, before I even got into coaching, that I really, really kept that a part of my coaching philosophy throughout my career.
So this segues actually really well to picking your brain a little bit about the process of recruiting and building out your roster. It's a slippery slope when it comes to recruiting, particularly like nowadays, because whenever you're building out your roster, you're faced with the situation of maybe you're getting a recruit who might be replacing that quote unquote weakest link. What are some of the things that you look for in your recruits? And then also kind of two-prong, when you do have a player who's struggling and you may have a recruiting class of players who are, call it, let's say, better at the time on paper when coming up, how are you faced with having to either let somebody go or try and kind of get on their get on their butts, for lack of a better term, to keep them growing and to build your roster out?
So during the recruiting process, the thing that I did is I tried to attend as many junior events as I could. High school events, I would attend the state championship, depending on, whatever level, whether it was, here in Ohio, it's Division 1, 2, or 3, but in South Carolina, it was, 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A. I for sure attended the state championship. If I could attend a regional or a district or a sectional, I would also do that. Those were the events that mattered the most. But in junior golf, I tried to attend as many events of an individual that I could, because the more you watched them play in junior golf, the better odds you had of seeing them when they played really well at their best. But then when you'd catch them on a day where it was really a struggle just to make par, and you really kind of got a look into the window of the kind of competitive spirit they had. Additionally, with that, the number of times they would compete throughout the year outside of high school golf, particularly in junior golf, that also was a really good snapshot of how much they like to compete genuinely. It's like any sport, recruiting is it's a subjective effort, in that what happens in their junior year and senior year may not translate initially into their freshman year in college golf. But if you have a good feel about that individual being a true competitor, then you know that if they have a rough patch during their college career, that they have it within them, that they want to get out of it, that they have the competitive spirit inside of them, that's what's going to push them through at the end of the day. And so that was one thing that I really tried to focus in on. I also try to convey that college golf cannot be the end of the road. And I would preface it by saying, you may not think right now you're the 1% of 1%. Your parents may not feel that you're the 1% of 1%, and your friends probably don't. However, the only person that needs to believe that is you. And while you're in college, if you have professional golf as a goal you're shooting for, then you're going to continue to work. You're going to continue to set goals. You're going to continue to try and get better. Whereas if college golf is a means to an end to satisfy your mom or your dad because of all the investment they put in financially and time-wise, getting you to junior tournaments, paying for clubs, et cetera, then, you might just throw your hand and say, well, I made it. So it's all just gravy, while I'm here. And I'm just going to focus on my degree, play some golf, be on the team, stay in good standing, and off I go. And, during my career, and I'm saying this as I think about it off the top of my head, there's not one instance where I did not bring a player back 1 year after the year before based on performance on the course. If there was a player that was let go out of the program, it was because of things that were off the course. It had nothing to do with their ability on the golf course. It was because of my time in the late 90s and early 2000s before I got into coaching, and I really delved into trying to play and reading books and talking to different people and having mentors in the game, I gained a true understanding of how golf works, and how sometimes the harder you practice and the more anticipation and expectations you have on yourself, the inverse effect happens and your scores suffer as a result. That I cannot necessarily explain. It's just, that's sometimes what happens. But then if you're relaxed and you play with no expectations and you just truly lose yourself in competing and just trying to hit every shot the best that you possibly can, when you sign your card on the 18th hole, you signed for a good score. And then you start stacking scores on top of one another. So that was, and I talking to kids, young people, finding out what, was driving them. It was I loved every part of the job, as I said earlier, but recruiting was one thing that I really enjoyed, because it got me introduced to just a lot of awesome young people and families.
So, Coach, you kind of mentioned this before a couple times. It's not out of the ordinary to see a freshman struggle, and it's obviously not out of the ordinary to see a college athlete, regardless of the sport, but in this case, golf, where they go through a little bit of a slump. How did you? I know how you did it, but I know how you handled that situation. But for the viewers and the listeners, what would you do to kind of try to get that player over the hump or out of the slump? Was it more mental? Did you give them like a talking, did you talk to them about it, or did you help them with the physical aspect of the game? How exactly did you help them through that period of time?
So during the recruiting process, I tried to get to know the instructor that each young man was working with before they got to campus. Early in my career, I would say year 3, year 4, year 5 at the latest, I made a conscious decision to kind of get out of trying to be an instructor for guys on my team, because this is 2007 to 2009, where each young man I was recruiting to the program, they were working with their own golf instructors already, every single one of them. And so if I thought once they got to campus, if I had a good understanding in getting to know their instructor and what they were working with, then I could be an extra set of eyes for them while they were on campus practicing, qualifying, and going into tournaments. As I got later in my career and I started to understand more and more about the game and the psyche, if you will, in my opinion, it did become more of a battle between the ears. Not necessarily, and within psychology, it would be more of a confidence thing versus anything else. And so, I constantly try to, put my arm around a guy, or, just say, hey, just hang with it. Golf is a game of processes. It's not necessarily a game of results. As long as you put in the work day in, day out, over the long haul, then the results are going to come. And when the results come, you're going to have less of the crest and the wave are going to be maybe not as high, but they're going to be closer together, and they're going to be much more consistent. And as I said a minute ago, golf is hard as it is. In my opinion, it's the hardest sport anybody could choose to play. What makes it hard is the psychology and the understanding of what goes into the game, and how you can look like an All-American on a hole or a stretch of holes, and then you can look like a 20 handicap within the same round over a course of a stretch of holes as well. And so you just have to work your way through the poor play and the poor shots. And you have to really rely on and remember as a reference of what works well in those holes that you play well. I found I didn't do any published journals about it, but I always had or thought that the percentage was pretty high. The holes you played, it wasn't because your golf swing was magically good, those holes. It wasn't because your putting stroke was magically good, those holes. It wasn't anything physical. It was all about in your mind and in your being, your body, that you were just playing golf. You weren't thinking about anything. You were just simply arriving at your ball. You were picking out a target clearly. You were focusing on that shot clearly, and then you played your shot. And then you moved on and you played the next shot where it lied in the fairway or on the green. And then when you played poorly, it was because your mind shifted from focusing on the target to how am I going to get this ball to that point. You started thinking about how versus where. And Ben will tell you, when you start thinking about how, that's when swing thoughts creep in. That's when, a shot that's not hit exactly flush, something just maybe hit off the heel or the toe, just bothers you a lot longer than what it should. And that bleeds into the next shot. That bleeds into the next hole. And then you get out of that, but you've been in that mode of thought for 45 minutes or so, and you've lost, 4, 5, 6 shots to the field. Then you kind of wake back up and get back into that mode of thought that was successful for you. And then you start trying to chip away from those shots you lost. But, when I was at Xavier, I almost said to the team, we were at a tournament, and this is when kind of I had a little bit of a roster overhaul after my first year. But it was during my third year, and I had all freshmen and sophomores. This was the year before Ben got there. And we were at a tournament. It was after a 36-hole day. And while the team was eating dinner, I was just kind of looking back over the scores and the hole-by-hole numbers that was available through GolfStat. And I noticed exactly that we had every player had a stretch of about 45 minutes to an hour where you could just see that they either got tired, or because this was in the fall season, the last event of the fall. So for, high school, or for freshmen who had just, been playing a lot of junior golf and high school golf, this is the end of a very busy time. And so fatigue may have been a factor. But anyway, I noticed there was about a 45-minute to 60-minute stretch where they had some high numbers. But then the other part of the time, the other, 13, 14, 15 holes, it was really good. And I remember saying to the team, I said, I can't sit here and predict when you're going to start playing good golf throughout the entire round. And then as a result, then you start stacking rounds on top of each other. But it's obvious it's going to happen before long, because if you look at over the course of 14, 15 holes, you guys are right there, but you just lose focus, or within this 45-minute stretch, maybe you hit a couple bad shots and that led into a couple more bad shots. But in watching you over the course of this entire day, it's obvious that, good golf is right around the corner. We just have to continue to be patient, and we have to understand, this was another thing I used to say a lot, is time and place, understanding the time within your round and the place you're at on the golf course as to when, shots you choose to execute. Case in point, if you're on a really hard par 4, that might be the number 1 handicap hole, and you have a reachable par 5 on the next hole, maybe a easier par 3 or an easier par 4 holes after that. Maybe just say to yourself, if I make bogey on this hole, I don't lose anything, because I have some holes coming up where I can make this shot up and then some. Whereas because we were young at the time, you know, we were guilty of trying to play that number one handicap hole for birdie, and we'd end up making a double, and then that would bleed into other holes because we just kind of lost time and place in what we were trying to think about and execute. But we got better at that. And so that was just kind of a little snapshot as to, you know, what I try to do with players, particularly young. In college golf, a lot of times your freshmen want to come in and they want to plant their flag within the program. They want to, you know, do everything right. They want to travel right away. They want to prove that they belong. So, you know, it's not unusual for a travel roster to be made up of at least one or two freshmen. And they have a lot to learn. And so the patience and the ability to kind of just work their way through that first semester, that first year of college golf is really important, because if that's handled well, then that sets them up for a really good career. Whereas if you kind of come down on them for making some boneheaded mistakes, then that kind of can, you know, fold the tent a little bit and kind of stunt their growth over the course of their career.
Ben and I talk at length about this, and ironically, you don't have to go very far, literally as of 2 days ago, to find a prime example of the idea of keeping your mentality in check. Ben and I always talk about the mentality of golf. He talks about his mental coach. He talks about actually when I was in grad school, we did a project that I interviewed Ben on for discussing what it's like to have anxiety and have a mental hiccup, because at the end of the day, golf is so mental. And take, like, for example, Chris Kirk, who won this past Sunday, how he had this whole bout with bad shots led him all the way down to the pit of alcoholism and back. And you had mentioned earlier the idea of passion. Where's the middle ground between keeping your psyche in check but also holding on to that passion? Because I feel like if you hit a rough stretch, it almost seems like the mentality is getting to you, but also your love for the game is also dying. How do you manage both of those things, and how do you try and keep everybody on level pegging when things do go south?
Yeah, that's a great question. And for every player, they handle frustration differently. You hope everybody handles it like Ben used to, where it didn't matter if he holed out from 180 yards for eagle, or if he just, you know, hit a 100-yard wedge into the bunker and proceeded to make bogey. His body language never changed. His pace of his walk never changed. There was a term that I used, or I learned from the coach at Indiana University, wasted energy. And if you hit a poor shot, or if you have a bad hole, the more energy you waste, i.e. throwing clubs, being demonstrative with your reaction to a poor shot, or whatever it is, the more you waste energy, the longer it takes for you to get back to the proper mindset you have to have for the most important shot on the golf course, and that is your next shot. And the first year I was at IU, I remember this clear as I used to use this example all the time. Ben may or may not remember using it, but anyway, as part of a tournament, the tee gift was every player, every coach got a pass to the Ryder Cup at Medina on Saturday afternoon. We played our practice round on Saturday morning, and then we got charter buses to the golf course at Medina, and we were able to stay on the grounds at Medina all afternoon for the Ryder Cup. And then we got a ride back to the course. Then we went to the hotel for the first day round the following day on Sunday. So anyway, Coach Mayer and I, we found a spot in a sea of people on this one hole. I think it was hole 11 at Medina. It's a dog leg left par 4. And Zach Johnson, interestingly, as he was the most recent Ryder Cup captain, but at this time he was one of the top players in the world, and he was on the Ryder Cup as a player. Anyway, he hit this shot just way to my left, which would have been to his right off the tee. And I mean, where I'm standing, I was standing at the elbow of the dog leg, and he was probably a good 50 or 60 yards to my left. I mean, just a horrible tee shot. And I watched as he left the tee going to his shot. His pace never changed. He kept the same angle of his head looking down at his yardage book the entire time, 250 yards, 260 yards, whatever it was. He got to his ball. He went from his ball back to the fairway area on the line that he was going to play his shot. His pace never changed. He never wasted an ounce of energy, like, just being demonstrative with his reaction to what was obviously a terrible shot for him. And then he proceeded to play a shot, and he got it back into position, and he went on to, they tied the hole, he and his partner. And I use that example multiple times the rest of the time I was at IU. And then when the situation would come up, and it applied while I was at Xavier, because it's obviously a professional at the highest level, but that was just such a clear-cut example of the difference between, or one of the differences of a player that plays at an elite level in golf, and then guys who I'm working with who are at a very early point in their career, and they're on a good track. They're farther along than what they think, but this is an area where a lot of college freshmen, college sophomores can learn a huge lesson in whatever the result of the shot is. If it's less than perfect or perfect, treat it the same. Have that same piece about you inside, so that you don't get too high, you don't get too low. You just are, like a duck on water. Your feet may be inside, your heart's going 1,000 miles a minute, but if you just project a calm demeanor, you're able to process what happened a lot more clearly, so that you can fix it on the fly. But also you're never outside of the realm of where you need to be. And that is you need to be focused on that next shot, which is the most important shot on the golf course, because it's your shot. Some figured out, very early in their career. Some figured out while they're in school, and then some just, it takes them a little even longer when they graduate. They've improved, but they're not to the point where you would ultimately like them to be. And then hopefully they work it out as they're playing for money. But, that was a thing where seeing that with Zach Johnson in the Ryder Cup, that kind of gave me a really clear picture that I could transfer to the players I was talking to within my program.
Coach, you had mentioned kind of at the beginning of the pod how you started your college coaching career at Newberry, and then I had mentioned that you went on to be an assistant at Kansas, IU, and then the head coach at Xavier. What was the level of difference between the quality of golfer that you noticed coaching at the Division II level versus a higher Division I level such as Kansas or IU to more of a mid-major program as in Xavier? What was the difference?
Well, initially at Newberry, it was, I would say the players had an inferiority complex because they wanted to go to South Carolina, or they wanted to go to Clemson or Furman or College of Charleston or one of the other Division I schools in the state, but they ended up at Newberry. They weren't good enough, and they were only going to be able to get so good. Well, as we got better, their acceptance changed from, screw those places, we can beat them anyway. Whether that was true or not, don't know. In some cases I do know, because the last 2 years I was at Newberry, we did get invited to some Division I tournaments, and we performed really well. So that helped them get over that stigma of saying, well, I'm not good enough. Well, you are good enough, and you're proving that you are good enough. From at KU and IU, it goes back to what I said a minute ago when they felt like they had got there. So not that their work was done, but they got to reap the rewards of getting to a place like that where they had all the gear they could handle and more. They got to go on phenomenal trips. They got to go just being a Big 12 or a Big 10 athlete, student athlete, and all that goes along with that. The speakers that were able to come to campus that they got to listen to. It's just a totally different environment. The players and the game is the same. In fact, when I left Newberry and we were, a top 10 program for Division II, you translate that over in Division I, and there's no, you're almost top 70, top 75 performing team in Division I if you're top 10 Division II. I mean, the level and competition in Division II is that good. And so you're working against, not against, but you're working with a different mentality within the player in the program, and that you're still trying to push them to say, you've come to a great spot, but this isn't the end game. You need to work harder. You need to push to reach your goals so that, we can win a Big 12 or a Big 10 championship or individually or whatever the goals are. You're still trying to find the moon that they shoot for while they're there. And then when I got to Xavier, rules within the NCAA changed to where you were trying to get players as good as they could get, but you were doing that understanding that they got too good, they were going to leave, because it was possible for them to go to a Power 5 program within the SEC or the Big 10, the Big 12, what have you. And so it was a little bit like, well, great job. You've gotten so much better, but damn it, now you might leave. And but that's just the way it is. And but it was always about, the first conversation you have with a young man, the beginning of the season, what are their goals? What do they want to accomplish? And then how do we work together to achieve those? That's when you can also hold the player accountable at that point. You can kind of circle back and say, I'm not using Ben as a literal example. I'm using him as a figure. You say, hey, Ben, remember we sat down first week of school and this is the goals you had outlined and you knew you needed to work hard. Do you think you're working as hard as you think you could be in order to achieve goals 1, 2, and 3? And, Ben might say, yeah, to me, but if he gets back and he's got some alone time and he's kind of rehashing it, well, maybe I'm not. And maybe I'm not really willing to work as hard as I need to. And if that's the case, then, there's things we need to talk to about that. But understanding, or from a coach, trying to understand and hear what the player wants himself for that year and for his career kind of gives me an opportunity to keep that accountability level at high so that we can continue to work together to achieve those dreams. And then at the same time, Ben as a player can come to me and say, hey, coach, I want to do this, but I need more effort from you to help me get there. And so it's that way it's a really good relationship between player and coach. And that's, as I said at the outset, that's what I strive to have. That's what I strive to have my career as a coach be.
As you rose through the ranks from Division II to Division I and beyond, one of the things that always stood out to me as somebody who covered college sports for a little bit was obviously the difference between football, basketball, and then kind of everybody else. When it comes to college golf, being the niche sport that it is, what were the biggest challenges and how did you overcome them? Not having the largest budget, knowing that golf might not necessarily be a high net revenue sport as opposed to, for example, like Kansas and IU and even Xavier, huge basketball programs that every year we're going to the dance. How did you try and combat that and use the limited resources that you were granted to maximize your output for your team?
Well, so through the university, we had what was called an operating budget. And that's what you used initially to do everything and to do as much as you could for the program. Getting the guys their tournament gear, getting the guys golf bags, their golf balls, all the equipment, going to tournaments, et cetera, et cetera. But then you also knew places at Newberry and Xavier that fundraising was just a component that had to happen. So at Newberry and at Xavier, I was able to come into contact with some alumni that were very supportive, that wanted the guys within the programs to have a great experience, go to great tournaments, whether that be, when in South Carolina, going to Florida or going to a Division I tournament in New Jersey or things in between. Xavier going to Arizona every February to start the spring season, or going to a nice match play tournament down in Florida to start a spring season 1 year, do a nice spring break trip when we were at Xavier every March. Just things like that to give the guys the understanding that, I as a coach and the supporters of the program are willing to do whatever it is we can, that you have a great experience so that when you leave, you felt like you had the ability to turn over every rock to become as good as you could be to prepare yourself for professional golf. And so that was just a part of the job that I accepted. And then as you see and hear guys say to each other how awesome a trip is, or how awesome, this particular piece of gear is, or this particular opportunity during spring break, or whatever the case is, they don't say it to you, but you understand how much it means to them because you're hearing them say it to each other, when we're in the van or walking through a terminal or whatever. They're conveying their thoughts and their excitement to be a part of what's going on. And so that only motivates you to continue to give them more and more great experiences, so that, when they walk away, when they're in turn at a point in their adult life that they feel like they have an extra, $100, $200, whatever, that they're like, I want the guys in the program to have as good of an experience, maybe even better than what I did, because it made a true impact on my career. It made a true impact on the time of life that which I was going through college, and it meant a lot. And I want it to mean the exact same for the young men that are going through it now.
Coach, one last question before we move into more the funny aspect of the show. There's obviously, we've touched on this several times already, the aspect of recruiting. That's how you build a team. That's how coaches, they envision themselves building a winning roster. How vigorous was the recruitment aspect for you as a head coach? How was it compared to being an assistant coach at Kansas or IU? Were players reaching out to you? Were you going out and seeking players? How exactly did that whole thing work? I know that's
it was every day. It was every day, all day. If you weren't recruiting, if you weren't spending a block of time every single day, 365 days, whether you were on a Christmas break, whether you were in the middle of summer, it didn't matter. If you did not set aside a specific block of time to recruit every day, then, you may not get the program to the level that you ultimately hope to get it to. It's just that time consuming. Players reach out to you, but the players that you really want, you got to go get, and you got to reach out to them, and you got to get them attracted to what you're trying to do. And then it becomes easier then the communication becomes more of a two-way street. I will tell you a funny story. So the first tournament I ever went to at Newberry, this is fall of 2004, and I'd only been in Newberry for a short time. I'd been through the fall season, and then South Carolina, they had some junior events in November and December, and so the first two that I went to in November, I went to one. And I wore like a Newberry shirt. I wore a Newberry hat, and I could stand in front of a player, and he would totally ignore me. Okay, so because Newberry had no history or tradition of competitive success, so after that first time, so the rest of that first year, I would wear nothing associated with Newberry. I would take a pad of paper and a pen, and I would write down who I wanted to go back and send a letter to, saying that I watched them play. But other than that, I looked like I was somebody's dad or somebody's uncle, or just somebody that was a friend of the family, just because I didn't want them thinking I was from Newberry, because they were just going to automatically tune me out or just ignore me. So my first year, I went to junior tournaments wearing no athletic gear whatsoever. And then I would go back to my office. I would write a letter. Emails weren't really in vogue even at this time, so it was all handwritten letters. And I would say, hey, and I would always try and think of a shot. May have been a putt, may have been a shot from the bunker, whatever. And I tried to specifically mention a shot that I'd seen that they hit, and include that in the letter, so that they were understanding that I was paying attention to what it is they were doing, that I wasn't just there to be there, that I was keenly interested in their performance and paying attention to what they were doing. And obviously over the course of that first year, I got more and more feedback and more response from my communication. But from time to time, I think about that when I'm talking to the former players from Newberry, and I say, that first year, I didn't wear anything because nobody wanted to know who I was or where I was from. I just kind of went and took notes and then went from there. So, but as I got into KU and IU and Xavier, those logos carry a pretty high level of respect and noticeability. So it got easier, but the thing that stayed the same was the more you wanted a player within your program, you had to show the nth degree of effort, the nth degree of attention, the nth degree of desire to have them come be a part of your program, because they just had so many other opportunities.
So, Coach, one last thing before I let you go. Ben was dying to get me to ask you this question yesterday as we were reviewing this. I always make fun of Ben, and we have our own love-hate relationship on the show. If you ever listen to us, every Monday at 7:30, and I'm always late. So now apparently I'm going to start owing him push-ups. But,
oh, dude, you're in the thousands right now.
We're making it work.
Just so you know, I will text Steven. I'll be like, yo, we still on for 7:30 tonight? It'll be in the morning. He's like, yeah, for sure. And then he'll text me at 7:05. Hey, I'm going to be 15 minutes late because I have to finish making the wifey dinner. And I'm just like, dog,
I'm the cook in the house. What are you going to do? It is what it is. I can't tell the steak to go faster. I'm sorry. But Coach, so any funny stories about Ben specifically, him being a complete ass? You could be as unfiltered as possible. I want to know every little stupid thing he did under your tenure as a coach.
To be completely, totally honest, Ben was such a professional. Every day he was at Xavier. On his initial visit, and I know I'm at the risk, Steve, of not giving you what you want, but I gotta be honest at the same time. But when Ben made his visit on May 24th of 2019, how about that, Ben? I even know.
I did not know that.
What time was it?
I think I picked him up from campus late morning, lunchtime. I can't give you the time of day, but I do know the day. I do know the date. But Ben was so clear cut in what he wanted to do, where he wanted to go, and what he was looking for in the next school he was going to be at, that I couldn't help but say, I really need this guy part of our program. It just so happened that a young man that was at Xavier was looking to transfer. He had accomplished a lot in his short time at Xavier, and he wanted to go be a part of a school at a bigger conference. And so in that first visit, I remember communicating to Ben that this is where I was, and that I wasn't 100% able to offer him a spot on the team, but if a spot opened up, which was a chance that would happen, that Ben was going to be the person to fill it out. And Ben was true every day he was at Xavier that he was on that visit. I mean, he was just a true professional. He maybe it's not funny on Ben, but Ben's reaction to other guys, he lost patience. Other guys in the program very easily. He took everybody at their word on day one, and he gave everybody a chance to prove that they were as hard a worker and as totally bought into their process as he was. As soon as he realized that wasn't the case, they stood no chance. He would talk to them, but it was very surface level stuff. Like, how are you doing? Is everything okay? How are your classes? There was nothing in depth, and he was not going to give the time of day for somebody to get in his inner circle if they weren't proving to him how bought in he was. He took in a freshman or two under his wing right away. That because of him, they made strides. But if Ben saw that you weren't bought in and you weren't 100% into the craft, is what he was, he did not have any time for you whatsoever. And maybe it's a Long Island, New York thing, or maybe it's just how he is. He made but I mean, it's not like he put on a brave face and then dropped him like a bad habit when he got out of speaking distance. I mean, there was no sugarcoating. I mean, he was just, I ain't got time for you. Go talk to coach or go talk to somebody else. I'm not wasting my time.
Ben he tells me he was like incredibly antisocial, and I always joke with him because I've always said, hey, when you go pro, I'll be your caddy. I'll tell you jokes. But I know deep down that Ben would opt to literally carry his own bag wherever he goes. When he's on the golf course, what was that level of literally don't talk to me? Was that where was he on that scale?
Regarding me, he would thankfully tell me, don't talk to me. Okay. I need to figure it out. Okay. I just had a bad hole. I just had a bad couple holes. Don't talk to me. Come back later. And I'd say, fair enough, Ben, I'll come back later. Whereas, someone other on the team that really didn't want me there, they wanted to figure it out, they would just, obviously tune me out,
Mm-hmm.
But Ben was, across the board, he didn't pull any punches. He said, Coach, I need you to go somewhere else, and I'll catch up with you in about 2 or 3 holes. I need to work some things out. I was like, fair enough. I'll see you later. Then I would say, you need any water? You need any, his big thing on the course was Uncrustables. He would go through a box per day. So if it were an 18-hole day, he'd go through a box. If it were a 36-hole day, he would go through a box and a half. I mean, that's all he wanted was Uncrustables. And he had to have Uncrustables, and he had to have, it got to the point where I bought a box for Ben and I bought a box for everyone else to share, because Ben would go through a box in 18 holes. It was the darndest thing I ever saw.
They are the elite core snack. I will give them that.
Yeah. You know what? It's so funny that you say that, Coach, because the first this whole thing is hilarious. I didn't even remember. Now you're jogging my memory. Like, yeah, I used to say that to you. Jeez, like I couldn't imagine saying that. Like, well, because the thing is, like, you and I, like, we got along well, and you accepted like my personality, because at times I can be like a little bit rough around the edges. And, you know, really? I know that, but you accepted me, and, you know, we obviously have great respect for each other. The thing when you were like, you know, if you weren't bought in, and, you know, Ben saw that, he'd give you a chance, but then eventually he'd just be like, well, screw you. When I went from Presbyterian to Xavier, at Presbyterian I was very vocal because there wasn't really any leadership. And when I got to Xavier, I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna like just shut up and just let people, like, you know, if they're bought in, great. If they're not, I'm not even gonna, like, I don't have time for it because I have my own stuff going on. And yeah, that's what happened. That's what happened. I mean, you know, yeah.
You know, when I say, you know, Ben, well, I used to say this to Ben too, because Ben he's a, you know, Steve, I'm sure you understand, he is like, I think I'm type A. Ben is type A plus.
Oh my God. Don't even get me started. So I like, as a journalist sitting down, I can riff off interviews easy. He had to sit down for 20 minutes yesterday and go through all the questions that I'm like, Ben, it's supposed to be fluid. It's supposed to be natural. The type A-ness is so over the top. He'll ask me for show notes on Sunday before the tournament's over. And I'm like, I need to, like, this is my time on Monday morning to sit down, get the notes through, and I'll send it to you for 12 hours in advance.
So
it has to happen so far in advance.
So one of the things I would talk to Ben about, and Ben, this will probably jog your memory too, is Ben was a tremendous student. Okay. Oh, yeah. He was Dean's List every semester he was there. But I would say to him, hey, Ben, you don't have to be Dean's List. Okay, I've recruited guys who can help you out. You know, just get a 3.0 or a 3.2. You know, don't obsess over a 3.6 or a 3.7. You know, just dumb it down a little bit. Spend a little bit less time worrying on your school and worry a little bit more time, you know, where you need to within golf, whether it be strength training or whatever. And he's like, I know, Coach. I need to do that. But I just get in there and I want to do my best. And I'm like, Ben, I get that. I know that's who you are, but it's bothering you. You're on edge because of this paper or this test that if you get an 85, it's okay. You don't have to get a 98. Just strive for a little bit less in school and let your teammates pick you up a little bit. But
you might be the first coach to ever openly admit that you wanted your players to focus less on school and more on the court.
I mean, it's not that I wanted to focus less on school, but there's definitely a balance.
Oh, yeah, of course.
You know, spending time to where, you know, a 3.3 GPA is damn good.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if you can have a 3.3 and have a 69 stroke average, that's great. But if you have a 3.8 GPA and your stroke average is 72, you know, as a coach, which do you want? You know what I'm saying? So, but, you know, that was a conversation that went on and on between Ben and I every semester he was there. And he always had the highest GPA he could possibly get, which is why he was, you know, the 2 years he was at Xavier, he was a academic All-American. And, you know, I can never fault anybody for, you know, being the true competitor. In everything they do it at the absolute maximum of their ability. And that, you know, that's what Ben was. That's what Ben is. And You know, you love having people like that a part of your program because they make me better. You know, I was a terrible student, and just being around Ben and the other guys that were good students, you know, I just like, wow, it's no wonder they have so many opportunities available to them after graduation because they were a competitor across the board. They didn't pick and choose where they brought their competitive spirits to. They were always on, and so it's pretty awesome. It's look back and laugh, but that was one of the things, you know, where Ben and I would have a banter back and forth is about, you know, just kind of, you know, it's okay to have a 3.3. You don't have to have a 3.7, but you know, Ben would have none of it. It was to the max.
One thing. So being that my brother and sister are so successful, and they did very well in school. I mean, my sister was like, you think I'm type A plus? My sister is like type A plus plus plus. I mean, when she was in high school, she got a 98. She would cry because she didn't get 100. Like, if I got a 90 on the test, I'm like, I'm cartwheel. If I could cartwheel, I would cartwheel. You know, but I always wanted, because it was believed by my teachers when I was much younger that I wasn't smart, that I wasn't like a good student. And so I always had this chip on my shoulder that I was like, I'm going to graduate with the highest GPA of the 3 kids. I'm going to have a higher GPA than Allie, the Tulane grad, and a higher GPA than Trevor, the Emory grad. That's what I'm going to do. So I had like all these like little battles I was fighting. Yeah, could I spend, you know, a little bit less time studying? Absolutely. I mean, if I could go back and do it again, I mean, I don't know why I was like stressing so much about like American Sign Language or like like
or like sign language?
Or like corporate finance. Like, I'm like, what? Like, I got a finance degree. It's not like I was ever gonna do anything with it. Like, I would never want to work in finance. So it was, I just, you know, the thing is, like, I never wanted to, like, let anyone down. And so, but looking back, I'm like, why was I spending so much time on that stupid paper for, like, business and info systems? Like, that was, like, unbelievable,
So
man.
Ben secretly has a inferiority complex to his siblings. Good to know for next time.
Well, it's hard.
His sister would work at. I never met his sister. It felt like I knew her very well because she was always worked into the conversation about, you know, how, you know, she was always very protective of Ben, always, you know, very mindful of, you know, whatever was going on in his life and whatnot, you know, just being a big fan as a big sister. So I always heard a lot about her, even though I never met her, but it felt like I knew her very well because Ben talked about her a lot.
She was very, you know, if I had a lady friend, she fully believes that I will never find someone good enough for me. That's literally, she's like, you're never going to find anybody good enough for you. And she's like, I really believe that. I said, okay, you need to like take a chill pill and just like you need to, like, she's like, no, Ben, like you have to pick better girls. Like, wow.
Oh my God.
Steve will tell you the right one's going to come. I used to tell you this all the time too, Ben. The right one's going to come along, and you're not going to have to, you know, feel like you're, you know, playing any game or having to say something. It's just it's gonna be like a hand in the glove. You're not going to want to talk to anybody else. You're just going to want to call her up or message her because you want to, you know, hear her voice or hear her laugh or hear how she's doing, and nothing else will mean as much as, you know, that particular person. So, or you make millions, get the penthouse in Miami, get a dog and a goldfish, and
Name
call
Connor.
it a day.
The goldfish's name's Connor, though.
There's that too. There's that too, Ben. You know, there is that too. I can't lie. I will say, being married for 13 years, being married and having somebody, life is there's nothing. Life is never better than being somebody with your best friend and to have it share with. When I was your age, I probably would have said the $1 million, having a goldfish, whatnot. But once you're married, you've been with the right person, then life can't get any better.
Coach, it was so happy. It was so nice to catch up. I'm so happy to see that you're doing well. I'm happy to hear that your family's doing well. Thank you so much for giving us however long we were at the past hour 15 or so of your time. We really appreciate it. This was a banger of an episode. So we're very thankful to have you on tonight.
It's my pleasure. And anytime I can connect with a former player and catch up, that's, as I said at the outset, that's always a highlight for me. And that's when I started, coaching 20 years ago. I hope that my relationship with my players would be that we would keep in touch. And so being on the show was just reinforcement to me that is in fact the relationship that you and I have, and that that's how you view me. And that is, for me, that's what it was all about. So Steve, it was great seeing you. Thanks so much for having me be on. And I hope you all have a great year, 2024. And Ben, like always, I'll be in touch, my man.
Absolutely. Well,
yeah.
Thanks for listening to Get in the Hole, the official golf podcast of Underground Sports Philadelphia. Catch us every week wherever you get your favorite podcasts, and be sure to like and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Get in the Hole Pod, and follow Underground Sports Philadelphia at Underground PHI. We'll see you next time, and remember, get in the hole!